last Romanov rulers were in a straight-up cult starting in 1901, and they didn't meet Grigory Rasputin until the end of 1905. Though Grigory was also a cult leader, he was far from responsible for leading the royal couple down a path lined with the occult. They did that entirely without his help. Tsar Nicholas II was the first son of Tsar Alexander III to survive into adulthood. But Alexander III was not very kind to Nicholas. He thought he was weak and immature, and did very little to prepare his son for the position he was to inherit, becoming the emperor of all of Russia. Tsarina Alexandra was born Princess Alex of Hesse and by Rhine. Her father was Grand Duke Louis IV, and her mother Princess Alice of the United Kingdom. Princess Alex was Queen Victoria's favorite grandchild, and Victoria wanted Alex very badly to marry back into British royalty. But when Alex was 12, she traveled to Russia to attend the wedding of her sister, Princess Elizabeth, who was marrying Alexander III's younger brother, Grand Duke Sergei. Here is where 16-year-old Nicholas II first laid eyes on Alex, a face he would never forget. They wouldn't meet for another 5 years when they both attended the same Russian ball, and this time Nicholas pursued her, but she turned down his advances because she was a devout Lutheran, and Nicholas was Russian Orthodox. 5 years after this rejection, Nicholas saw Alex once more, and this time he outright proposed to her. Queen Victoria really did not want Princess Alex marrying into Russian royalty, saying, "The state of Russia is so bad, so rotten, that at any moment something dreadful might happen." Alex felt so conflicted that she broke down in tears and was comforted by her sister Elizabeth, and eventually she accepted Nicholas's proposal. But before they could even get married, on November 1st, 1894, Tsar Alexander III died suddenly of kidney disease at one of the palaces. Nicholas was devastated, unprepared, and uninterested in becoming the next Tsar, confiding in his brother-in-law, Grand Duke Alexander, "What is going to happen to me, to you, to Xenia, to Alex, to Mother, to all of Russia? I am not prepared to be a Tsar. I never wanted to become one. I know nothing of the business of ruling. I have no idea of even how to talk to the ministers." And unfortunately, these worries were wildly prophetic. Almost immediately after his father's death, Nicholas and Alex got married, and she adopted the name Alexandra after converting to Russian Orthodoxy. And very quickly, the extended members in the Romanov family began to dislike Alexandra. She absolutely insisted on living a very private life, and could only see the responsibilities her subjects owed the crown, but never the responsibilities that she owed her subjects. She refused to listen to even the slightest mention of any political reform during a time where monarchies all around the world were being forced by their populations to democratize, and her husband did nothing to impose on these beliefs. Though they were not very good rulers, the royal couple did love each other very much until their dying day. But some of the only other nobles who were able to penetrate Alexandra's sphere of isolation were a pair of sister princesses from Montenegro, Princess Milica and Princess Anastasia, better known by her nickname Stana. And before I continue, please resist the urge to correct me. I know it's tempting, but come on, there's many translations of these names, and you know who I mean. These princesses were invited to St. Petersburg as young girls to attend the Smolny Institute of Noble Maidens, and as soon as they were old enough, they began moving their way through the highest circles in Russia's capital. Milica married Nicholas II's cousin, Grand Duke Peter, and Stana originally married a Duke George, but he eventually left her and Russia for his mistress in France. However, Stana was unmoved by this abandonment, as she'd already fallen in love with Peter's older brother, Grand Duke Nikolai, nicknamed Nikolasha. Nikolasha was an army officer who had a horrible reputation amongst his subordinates, who all referred to him as the Evil One. It is rumored that Nikolasha once sliced his own dog in half at a dinner party, just to prove that his sword was the finest in Russia. I believed you, dude. You didn't have to do all that. Nicholas II's mother, Maria, said that Nikolasha was sick with an incurable disease. He's a fool. So the set of sister princesses married a pair of Grand Duke brothers, and the four of them became nearly inseparable. And eventually, these sisters started to gain several unsavory nicknames, most notably the Black Princesses, both because they were the daughters of the King of Montenegro, aka Black Mountain, but also because these sisters were extremely fascinated with all things occult, especially Milica. To be fair, many nobles in Russia were very fascinated with the occult during this time, known as Russia's Silver Age, where all forms of mysticism swept through elite circles. This was also happening in America, Germany, and England, which this author credits to the spread of something called spiritualism, a practice founded by a set of three sisters in 1848 in Hydesville, New York, Leah, Margaretta, and Catherine Fox. Spiritualism is a religious movement centered on the belief that the living can communicate with the dead, especially with the help of special mediums. And this author says two of England's most famous believers in spiritualism were Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Queen Victoria herself. So perhaps this is where Alexandra's interest interest in the occult was born, through the beliefs of her grandmother. Okay, now back to the Black Princesses. Milica was extremely well-read, studied Persian, and was even awarded a diploma as a doctor of Hermeticism from the Advanced School of Hermetic Sciences in Paris, France, a school run by the leading figure of the French occult, a man nicknamed Papus. A prominent Freemason, Papus was a trained medical doctor who'd steeped himself in what he called ancient esoteric knowledge. It is believed that Papus established a branch of Freemasonry in St. Petersburg, and that both Peter and Nicolasha were members. According to the French ambassador to Russia at the time, Papus held a seance in the Russian palace as the 1905 Russian Revolution was happening outside its gates, during which he allegedly summoned Tsar Alexander III, who instructed his son to remain strong and use all of his power to prevent reform in Russia. After the seance, Papus told Nicholas that he would use all of his own power to prevent revolution from being successful in Russia, but that his protection would only last during Papus's own lifetime. Papus died in late October of 1916 from tuberculosis after contracting it from serving as a doctor in World War I. And just 4 months after his death, the 1917 Russian Revolution broke out, ending the Romanov dynasty. It was Papus who introduced Russian military agent Count Valerian to another Frenchman named Monsieur Philippe. Born a peasant in 1849, Philippe began to claim to have healing powers at the young age of 13. He began diving deeply into the occult, hypnotism, and supposed magic, then set up his own lab and began accepting patients in 1881, despite having no medical degree, and his reputation began quickly spreading throughout France, particularly amongst the elite. Soon, Philippe also began holding seances. Count Valerian attended one of these seances in Paris on the anniversary of the execution of King Louis, where Philippe allegedly called on the spirit of the dead king and astonished attendees when a gruesome, severed head appeared suspended in midair, then vanished before they knew it. It is theorized that Count Valerian is the one who introduced Philippe to the Black Princesses. In my next video, I'll be discussing the first cult that the last Romanov rulers joined together, that of Monsieur Philippe's, and how this cult started the rumor mill that Nicholas and Alexandra were never able to pull themselves out of. I learned all of this in this book, Rasputin by Douglas Smith, and thank you so much for watching.